right, so
Whoa.
everybody, welcome, right, to today's edition of Master Mentors interview series, right? Today we have someone that I wanted in for pretty long time, right? I think some people have probably seen him quite around, right? I think it's been quite, active, right, in the old online space with Mr. Alvin Poh, right?
Hey
So,
everyone.
yeah, so Alvin, before we begin the interview, maybe I'll share a little bit, 1 or 2 minutes about yourself, right? For that 1 or 2 people, right, who might not know who you are who are yet.
All right, so a little bit about my background. I started Vodian, a cloud hosting provider, when I was 17 years old, with my co-founder who was my classmate at that time. So we scaled the business up from zero. We bootstrapped the whole business. It was from zero to $30 million. The acquisition of the business happened in 2017, 2018. That was when I was the age of 34 and I completely left the business. After that, I went to travel the world full-time for 2 years, came back in 2020, right before COVID struck, and transitioned to become a coach, helping entrepreneurs scale up their business. I do that through my brand called Super Scaling. So that's the brand and the book that I wrote. Oh, the book's right there, actually. Can you even see the background?
Yes.
And I have also launched another cloud hosting provider now called CLDY. So these are the two things that I am doing as of now.
Yeah, so thanks so much for sharing. So I think a good intro to some of the things we're going to talk about today, right? Which is, and I think the first question is, right, for you, right, to start the business. I know you shared a little bit about the book. We'll put a link for sure for people to get. I know you just got a new batch of it because there was so much demand, right? Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to check it out, right? So I think one of the stories you shared, right, was about how you decided to even do the business full time, right? So for you, right, was there any fear that came from it when you did it, or was it a very natural decision? And if so, right, what were some of the things you did initially, right, that made you think, hey, I think this is really the direction for me to go for the long term?
You mean the first business that I had, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was very, very interesting because as a student back then, at 17 years old, my family wasn't very well to do. And the angle that I had, right, wasn't to be the next Uber. I didn't have time to be the next Uber. I needed profits. I needed money the next day. And so businesses for me was a form of income. And I cannot have a loss-making business for years, right? I mean, yeah, you can get paid a salary, but the end of the day, like profits, P&L profits, that's more important to me. And when I started the business, I started it off as a service-based business. Service because businesses typically have two forms, right? One's a product-based business, one's a service-based business. We were a web design agency, and we were pretty much trading our time and skills for money. That's how we got started, and that's how we got like income right at the start. And that's why it was why it was clearer for us, me and my partner, when we saw the income come in and all that. It was either that or a part-time job that pays maybe $5 an hour. So yeah, we chose to start our own business instead.
Yeah, so I guess then the question is, so we all started out as a web design, you all just started trading time for money, right? So when did you all know that, hey, I think it's time to start this seriously as an actual business that you want to scale, right? As what some people say, to the moon, right, of sorts. But like, when do you know that it was time for us to be serious and actually to grow as a business instead of just as a part-time thing for you all?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that helped us along that journey. One was being very, very lean, and not just in the form of like lean in the sense of finances, your expenses, right? Not having like lifestyle creep, because it's very easy to, like, say for example, when you have say when you're broke, right, you're having $0 income, right? And then you start a job, start a business or whatever, you have like some income, you maybe make $2,000 a month, right? And then your lifestyle increases. Now, instead of being a broke, hungry person, you can now afford food and some accommodation or something like that, right? Some form of accommodation, maybe a room or something that you rent. When your business does better, or when your income increases and you get to maybe double of that, $4,000 a month, right? Now you can afford much better quality food, and now you can afford a bigger room to rent, nicer things around you maybe, and then you can start actually buying up all these things, right? And this happens no matter what your income is. You can when you're doing that at 4,000, once you get to $8,000 a month, lifestyle creep happens again, right? And then you realize, oh, actually you can afford a much nicer apartment, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it keeps going on if you allow it to happen. I guess the good thing about my co-founder and I were that we were very prudent, I guess. Maybe because of the family background that we both came from, it was very, very similar. Like both his family and my family were pretty low income, and we were taught to be very frugal and very prudent with our spending. And so I think that really helped because the income that we got, we saved. And it came to a point where what drove us wasn't the reason that drove us mainly was because we couldn't balance work and school anymore. As a service-based business, right? Because of that trading of time for money, that meant that if you don't have the time, you don't get the money, right? Because you don't have time to work on your client projects, you don't have time to spend with the client, you don't get money.
Yeah.
And we felt very constrained by that. And therefore, we looked at how we could actually pivot to become a product-based business. Because we had that prudence and that the mentality of being lean, we could. Because we had the savings, our lifestyle, we didn't subject ourselves to lifestyle creep. And so it was possible for us to say, okay, we are going to give up revenue. We are going to pause and even let go of certain clients and projects, but we're going to make the pivot, invest in physical hardware, invest in data center space, which all cost money, by the way,
Yep.
And actually fund that and hope that things work. And we did that because of the savings that we had. It definitely cost, I think, about all in maybe the first server and all the miscellaneous licensing costs, data center costs could be about $8,000 to $10,000. For the students that we were back then. I think we were like 19 years old. That was a lot of money, right? But again, it was possible because we had the savings from the service-based business that we had, and we could just plow it back in.
Yeah, and I like that story because I think this gives a very fresh perspective, right? Because a lot of people think that being a successful entrepreneur means like you have to burn all the boats, you have to go like chonga, right? You have to go crazy, right? Like give everything away, right? But I think from what you say, hey, there can be a way, right? You can be successful in business, right, based on results, right? But also to do it in a very prudent, right, in a very well calculated and risk managed way, right? I think that's a very fresh perspective to look at it, right? Especially in today's how people tend to hype up, right, entrepreneurs in today's world as well. Yeah. So I guess, right, with the next question is so when you first moved to a business, right, you want to share maybe one or two of your biggest you felt the biggest mistakes or areas of improvement you felt, right, that was big lessons for you, right, that could really, that you might even want to share with people or entrepreneurs who are starting out today, right, so that you don't repeat these mistakes in 2021 as well.
Oh wow, yeah. So these are all the lessons that I put in my book, man. Like the 5E skill engine is all based on that.
Stick preview.
I think one of the greatest things that happened in the 5E skill engine is that it was actually 4 principles at first. This is 5 principles, right? It was actually 4 principles at first. I realized that there was one crucial principle that I hadn't thought about because it was so normal to me. The principle that I missed out was the person himself. And I totally forgot to bring who I was, what thought processes I had, the mindset that I had into the equation. But I thankfully did, and that's why this is now 5 principles. So one of the greatest lessons and mistakes that I went through, right, were all mainly because of me. The mistakes that you make in your business, I mean, typically can be overcome because those are more tangible in nature. The mistakes that you make as a person are really, really a lot harder to overcome because you have to understand yourself and you have to understand what your limiting beliefs are, what your operating system is, right? If you don't understand that, then it is very tough to get better. It is very tough to overcome those things. For example, one of the key concepts that shifts when you maybe are a solopreneur, you're just starting out, you maybe have like a small team, versus somebody that's starting to have a team that's like 10 people and more, is the concept of leverage. Thinking, or let me just illustrate it with an example. When you first start a business, you're probably thinking about how to solve problems, right? How can I do this? How can I solve that? How can I help this client more? Or whatever, right? It's all I. Not a matter of I mean that is, I mean, not, you don't have a choice. It's usually just you, your partner, or maybe a few freelancers or a few full-timers that you have way at the start. But as you grow bigger and you grow a team, a business typically depends on two things: systems and teams. Your concept that you need to have, the questions that you ask, no longer are how do I do this? How do I solve that? Because your business will not scale that way. The question needs to be changed to, how can we do this? What does it take for us to solve this problem? Or how can we get better at doing this? It's the shift of I to we. And that concept, I think, was instrumental in allowing me to scale. Because if not, I was the bottleneck. I was the choke point of the business. And you realize this also in the limiting beliefs that you had. For example, one of the limiting beliefs that I had as a kid was that my parents always instilled in me, my teachers always instilled in me as well, this concept that work is good. You need to be a hard worker, right? A hard worker is something that is valued. And to a kid, I think as I was growing up, it was very dangerous because you needed to really understand the nuances in that value. So it's not that I don't work hard now. I still work hard, but I need to know how to work hard within the structure of a business. When I was starting to build a team, I was working hard and not delegating. I wasn't trusting people. I wasn't letting people do my work because I thought that was a sign of laziness. I thought that was a sign of, being a bad person. And I felt bad asking people to handle tasks and handle stuff to do. And so that really helped me back for the first few years of my business. It was only when I was like overwhelmed and I was like swamped with work and people started like, and then I started like, giving things away to people to do. That was a very slow progress, a very slow process that eventually showed me that, this wasn't sustainable. And I had to learn to be a manager. I had to learn to really give away work and to see it not in the sense of being lazy, but being in the sense of being a good like leader and manager.
Wow, I think two things that I hear. I think number one, as in yes, we talk about mindset, right? That's always the first starting point. Because if you have the mindset, right, everything else we can be sharing or teaching, right, couldn't work, right? If you actually don't have the mindset, operating system, right? So you talk about self-limiting beliefs, self-awareness, right? And I love the mindset of creating leverage, right? Because if you actually want to create your impact, you want to scale it up, right? Then hey, right, you want to think about how can we do this? How can you amplify the impact and do it in a much, let's say, faster manner, right? So that right, you actually can focus on higher value activities. So I guess the question I have, right, on my mind is, so let's say, right, because some of the folks watching might be let's say a full-time employee, or they're building a side hustle or business, right? So let's say for folks that might not be in the 6 digits, 7 digits, 8 digits business, right? Because they're so they were like, do I really need to learn how to systemize and scale right now, right? Or do you think this is a mindset that's also important, even if you're starting out, right, from your business and a perspective, right? Even not say from a business level, but maybe from a personal level. Like, what are some thoughts of having that mindset to scale, to create leverage from that perspective?
It's absolutely essential. Even if you are not even thinking about going into business, even if you are a professional in a career, I think that's absolutely essential because a system allows you to really, focus and create time for yourself. These days, I realize that the most valuable resource that I have is time. And when we think about systemizing, we're not thinking about complex text software or anything like that. A system is essentially just a series of steps that when you execute, right, get you to a certain result. And it will happen again and again, right? So it's systematic that way. And this concept can be applied in our lives anywhere, right? Even like when people talk about morning routines, that's something that I think is quite popular with the entrepreneurial crowd. That is a system as well, because it helps you the intent of the morning routine helps you get certain objectives. I mean, it depends on person to person what the objective is, but it's something that you repeat on a daily basis to get you to those results consistently. That is the kind of mindset and concept that we need in our business also. Can you imagine that, every day, right, you just reach out to like 10 people or 10 prospects, you are definitely going to start increasing the sales that you bring in on the for your business, because it's a numbers game, right? If you do that consistently day in, day out, you are going to get sales. It's a numbers game, right? It has to happen. So same thing with your morning routine also. If every morning you wake up and you work out, you are going to see results, right? You are going to see yourself get fitter, get stronger, get more mobile, less sedentary, healthier. All these things will happen. It won't happen overnight, but if you do that every single day, then over a period of time, those results will come to you. And that's what we do with systems. And we're trying to create all these systems in our business so that our business becomes more predictable, more consistent, and something that can ultimately scale.
Yeah, so my thing is that I think based on what I hear is that, like, not just in terms of business and income, right, but for other areas of life, right, if you actually want to be certain, right, of to achieve certain results, right, then systems, right, you have to think from that perspective, right, from it. So I guess I have another quick question, right? So I'm not and it's something that even I think I do face sometimes as an entrepreneur myself, right? Which is, okay, so let's say, right, I'm scaling, right, I'm delegating, I'm hiring, right? So now I have a bit of free time, right, to myself, right? And sometimes, right, at least for me, I do get caught up with the trap of number one, sometimes I have no idea what to do next, right? Because I'm like, okay, now I have all this free time, now my team, my system do it for me. Number two, right, is sometimes I might spend on things, right, that I feel was productive, effective, right, but somehow it was like, actually, what did I really do to drive the company forward, right? So what were some of your tips, right, or advice, right, for, let's say, entrepreneurs, right, who like, to say, okay, let's say I hired already, I delegated already, right, but now what do I do next, right? I'm a bit unsure. So what would some of your advice or tips be, right, for that folks, for that question?
I love it, because that is the second principle. I don't know why, but you're going in sequence, which is great, because the 5E scale engine comes in sequence. Like, there is a sequence to follow, and it's quite logical, right? Whatever you asked, you need to know that before you have a team, before you start like thinking about your customer journey, before you even like improve efficiencies in your business. And that's why it's the second principle. We want to make sure that we nail it down. Knowing what to do next is a great problem to have, right? And it's something that will occur throughout our business journey. Sometimes it's not because we have nothing to do. Usually businesses and business owners and entrepreneurs usually have too much to do, right? And then, but the same question applies. How do we prioritize and know what to do so that we actually move that needle in our business? And the tool that I use is the 4-stage future. The 4-stage future actually breaks down our vision into 4 steps, 4 stages, ultimately creating something that we have a very clear idea of how we are working towards. And what I tell all my coaching clients is that what we do on a weekly basis must bring us towards our 4-stage future. The 4-stage future is essentially 4 different stages, right? One, the furthest is about 5 to 7 years away. That's our overall vision, right? How do we get to that vision? Then we break it down into something that's 3 to 5 years later, right? Something that's a little bit closer, and we kind of like see how to get there already. And then we break it down into something even closer, which is 1 year. And then finally, what's happening in this quarter, right? So once we start breaking it down into that structure, into that format, we now know what we do this week. Is that something that will bring us towards the future that we envision? So for example, a lot of my clients say that, they want to expand regionally. Right, and that's something that could happen maybe in 5 to 7 years later. But what they are doing today that will get you there. If you want to go to a different like Southeast Asian country, like maybe Indonesia, for example, what is it that you must do today that helps you with that plan? A lot of times people want to expand to Indonesia and in say 5 years time, right? But right now they're not doing anything about that. They're just maybe growing the business with no plan or nothing, no actionable step that helps them get there. So an actionable step could be maybe just taking part in business networking specifically to Indonesia, right? Or asking around for contacts, not just to general people in Indonesia, but to specific people in your industry in Indonesia, right? Just having those conversations will allow you to have this pathway into Indonesia already that you previously did not have. And again, these things don't happen overnight. You cannot just, hey, I want to talk to somebody in Indonesia, and then tomorrow you speak to someone, right? Sometimes you need to build these relations, you need to build these events, or you need to build these connections before you can get there. And that's why we need to start now. And this is just like one very, very simple example. There are others also, right? People want to expand their product range, or they want to increase or triple their revenue and all those things, right? We need something today that actually helps us get there. We can't just do our business as per usual, like how we do it every single week or every day prior to this, and expect us to suddenly like transform into this, this completely different business. So
yeah, and I think that is about getting clarity, right? About first maybe the big picture about what exactly you want to go for, right? And then breaking it down, right? And then working towards that, right? So and I love it. I think it's still part of a system, right? From what I hear, right? You can really feel like, if you're honest watch, you can really feel like everything, right? You kind of boil it down, right? So I'm gonna go switch the topic up to something a little bit more human aspect, right? A bit more human related, which is the topic of hiring. Right. So I guess, right, now you've been coaching quite a couple of folks, right, in your space. You've been doing well, right, for and some like high level entrepreneurs are working with you at the same time. You're coaching them. So I'm just curious, right, what, based on your observations, right, what do you think are some of the biggest mistakes you feel that maybe business owners are making right now in today's world when it comes to hiring, right, and even when it comes to training or engaging their employees, right, from your observations and experiences today?
Yeah, so I'm a very systematic person. Even in my personal life, I'm quite systematic. So these things occur to me, and I do that because I like efficiencies. I don't like inefficiencies. I don't like problems, and I try to remove them from my life. And I bring this mindset to my business as well. So this is how I think normally. And when I first started coaching my clients, I realized that people didn't think like me. And not that it's a bad thing, right? Everybody has their strengths, and this just happens to be my strength. So I realized that the way they think is kind of different. So some of the bigger problems that people face, entrepreneurs face when hiring, sometimes are not even communicating the ideas and the things that are in their minds. And they think that everybody is a mind reader. They think that the staff that joins them is a mind reader. I was guilty of that also. And it's difficult because we bring about a whole host of like experiences and lessons and things that shape us, right? And when we communicate to people, sometimes we assume that they know what we are talking about. We assume that they have the same perspectives as we do, but most of the time they don't. And we've got to make sure that we know that, because it affects everything. It affects hiring. When we hire somebody, for example, if I'm in a hosting industry, if I hire somebody for the hosting position, I assume that they know everything about hosting, that they understand that this is for hosting, and they know with clarity what the objectives are and why they need to do certain things. But this is never the case. People need to be told, and people need to understand like why you're doing that. Why are we working towards this objective, right? Or why am I doing this tasks on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? What is the reason behind that? Even hiring actually is something that sometimes isn't clear. Like sometimes people don't know who they are hiring. Like when you say that you want to hire an A player on your team, what does an A player mean? What does that person look like in terms of traits, in terms of personality, in terms of skill sets? The clearer we are with that, the better. Another problem that people typically face is that when they hire someone, the job scope changes, and they realize that the person cannot perform, and they blame the person. They blame their employee, and they get very frustrated at the employee. But it's not the employee's fault. It's the employer.
Setting the expectations and the one that's onboarding and whatnot. How do you actually create those structures or those expectations in place that's clear, right?
Yeah.
So that you can make the best use, right, of the hire, right, to make sure they don't waste anyone's time, right, to make it more effective for the business long term.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually the third principle. So I'm not kidding when I say that
it wasn't
like
planned.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess then I think moving forward, right? So I think with the clients, right, that you have right now, right? So I'm just curious because they are pretty high level, right? These are people that have already achieved, like I said, I think at least 6 digits before they can even qualify to actually to even consider working with you, right? So I'm just curious, right? Because this something that might be of curiosity even to me, right? So what do you think are some of the characteristics or traits, right, of some of your students, right, or clients, right, they actually achieve, let's say, way bigger, better, faster success, right, than those, right, even though yes, they are pretty high level, but might not be moving as fast, right, or as much as they would like, right? What do you think are some of the maybe perhaps the differences in the traits and characteristics, right, that differentiates both groups of folks that you have already worked with for yourself?
If so, the clients that I do take on, they usually show two main things. They're very hungry, and they're very focused. And that is one thing that continually like impresses me or amazes me every single time I look at their progress. In a week, for example, they could have achieved so much that that if someone else is doing it, they'll probably be only achieving a fraction of what they did. And these are people who have full-time families as well. They have
Yep.
multiple children, and they are not free, right? So that they're really squeezing every single minute of their day. They are very clear about what needs to be done and why it needs to be done, and just execute, constantly taking action. And this is because of these two things, because they are hungry to want to grow their business, to really create that impact, to really serve the customers that they have, and they have that focus to make it happen. I think these are the two things that set them apart.
Oh, love it. I think the hunger, I think there's something right because I think everybody has the same amount of time, right? It's just about what you do with it and why do you want it, right? And the bigger, right, the why, right, the easier the how. And I guess the next question, right, I think drives down to the point because sometimes my observations and my sensing is that hey, when you work with the clients, right, you give them way more clarity, right, about what they have to do, what they have to get done, right, what exactly do they want to get up from the business, how do you get them to the next stage, right? But for let's say someone who's just starting out, right, or someone who is like a 9 to 5 employee, for example, right, how do you actually what you say hone that mindset, right, of from constantly, I would say, being vague, right, and always thinking of what's the general stuff, right? How did you hone that mindset of being like clear, right, and having the systems and clarity, right, not just for business but for other areas? But I think there's something to work on or hone on for the long term, right? But how will you say for someone who's starting out, right, to actually get started on that? Okay, how do I actually get it there over and over again?
Yeah. So we can look at how we do things in our lives, right? Like for example, when we want to, like many years ago, I wanted to become fitter. To become fitter, I had all these aspirational like figures, right? All these like bodybuilders and athletes who were like at the top of their game. If we want to be like that, coming from a position where maybe we were more sedentary or not as active, right? To there's a big gap. And to assume that we can get there just like that is pretty unrealistic. This is the same thing that happens when we look at business and trying to be systematic, right? It's the same muscle that we are developing, and we cannot assume that we get to from not being systematic at all in our lives to suddenly becoming like systematic in our business and our lives and in our career. So what needs to happen in between is that we need to start small. Just like in fitness, we're not going to be benching like 150 kilos. We're just going to start benching like maybe an empty bar, right? Or simple like push-ups, right? Stuff that actually gets the muscles working and progressively gets us stronger and stronger and stronger. Again, not in matter of days or weeks, but in matter of years. And that's why when I coach my clients, it's not an overnight thing. We try to work on things that happen really like over like months or years at least. If you are trying that on your own in your life, or just starting out as a professional, I would really suggest just understanding like how you can commit to certain like systems, create like habits, for example, or routines. That's something that's good enough. And then we try to improve efficiency. I remember like I was talking to one of my clients, I think the other day, about this. Brushing your teeth is a system. And honestly, it's not a very efficient or effective, not a very efficient system. Because if you think about it, right, when you wake up, right, honestly, you don't really need to brush your teeth first. It should be better that you brush your teeth after your breakfast or after coffee, right? Because you should brush your teeth after you eat, right? Your meals and all that.
Yeah.
But it has become a system, a routine, a habit, because it is a lot easier to get people to commit to it as the first thing they do when they wake up. Right? People won't forget. It's like, okay, I'll check this off, I'll brush my teeth and all that, right? Then I'll start my day. I tried waking up, not brushing my teeth, so I don't eat breakfast, but I have coffee, right? So I usually have coffee. The problem with coffee or breakfast, right, is that there's no fixed time to finish it. And usually when you finish it, your day already starts and you're already like hitting the ground running.
Yep.
When I finished my coffee, the plan was to brush my teeth. I tried for about 2 weeks. It did not happen. Like for 2 weeks, I literally just forgot to brush my teeth. Either I totally forgot or I ended up brushing my teeth at noon or something, which was not ideal. Right. So I think these are the things that we can start questioning and experimenting and figuring out why these are done and how can they be done better. So in this simple exercise, we really realize a few things. Systems, right? They need to be dependable. We cannot have a system that's not dependable. If it's not dependable, it's not a system because you cannot commit to it. So sometimes we do take an efficiency hit, which is might as well just brush our teeth when we wake up and then we get it done anyways. Then we have coffee or whatnot after that, but it doesn't matter. And the thing is to actually start practicing these habits and these systems, these routines in our daily life.
Yeah, I think also going back to the fundamentals, right? Which is start small, right? Go get a bit of feedback, right? And then you get improving over time and you get better. And like I say, this is not an overnight thing. This actually take weeks, months, years, right? To actually get to that level of systemizing, right? Probably to your level, right? Which probably took quite a number of years at the same time. Also, So I guess moving out, okay, so moving a little bit out of the systems, right? For now, right? So I think my observations from a lot of the audience, right, is that the reason why a lot of them want to like build a side hustle, right, or to actually move on with their career, right, usually the first thing they can think of, right, is about because I make more money, right, I want to make more growth, right, and so for someone, right, for yourself who actually landed, let's say, a pot of gold, right, a couple of years back, right, and in the end you decided, the famous story, you can read more about in the book, right, you sold away your car, sold away a lot of your belongings, right, so you share a little bit more about like what was the thought process there? I know you share in the book as well, right? That made you decide, right? That yes, right, I had the money, right? But yes, I bought all this stuff, right? But I don't think this for me, right? I decided to do what I do now. Can you share a little bit about your big why, right? About what you are doing today?
Okay, so that took a while to discover. It took me about 2 years actually, because when I first sold my business, it created this big gap in my life, this big void in my life. My business was literally everything that I did on a daily basis ever since I was 17. And at the age of 34, that was another 17 years later, right? That was something that, when I left the company officially, I just felt like I had absolutely nothing to do, no responsibility. And it was such a strange feeling. So for a while, I was absolutely lost. And I told myself that I needed to restart a new chapter. And to me, it just made sense that, I should start things on a clean slate. So I started selling everything. I don't know why. I just started selling everything because I felt that when I sold everything and I started fresh again, I could be a totally new person. So I sold my watches, my car, my apartment, a lot of my clothes. I gave away stuff as well. So much so that my life possessions could fit into 2 duffel bags.
Oh.
And then I took 1 duffel bag, left it at my parents' place, took another bag and, carried it and went traveling around the world. So I guess that gave me a lot of time and space to really slow down and start being a lot more introspective and reflective. Because when you are running a business, right, and I'm sure a lot of the readers can understand, you don't really have time to think about a lot of things. You don't really have time to think about yourself, because you have this big business to think about, your team to think about, like so many issues to think about, that you don't really have time to understand who you are as a person. And that was what I felt. So I again, that whole thing where I reduced my material possessions, that took a while again. I thought I loved fancy watches and fast cars and all that. I mean, they're nice, but to actually make it a reality and make it like to have ownership is a totally different issue. I realized I wasn't a person like that, because I don't like maintenance. I don't like all the hassle of ownership. A car, for example, any car, owning that involves a long list of to-dos, right? Like tasks. You've got to make sure that number one, on a yearly basis, there's like insurance and road tax, and you've got to make sure that even your tires are properly inflated. The cash card has like cash in it. You pay for your parking, at home, at the office, wherever. You got to pay your fines. You got to make sure that you repair the car, you wash your car. Man, it just goes on and on and on, right? And to me, I was like, wow, that's not something that I signed up for. So these days I'm so much happier just like commuting via like Grab or Gojek, or taking the bus or the train. That to me is a lot better. It's a much simpler life. I get time to think about other things, to free up my thoughts. It's much happier for me. Then again, this just applies to me. Of course, there are so many different kinds of people in this world, so I'm sure other people have their own way of what they like to do and what they don't like, their own preferences. And whatever I'm saying is just basically being clearer of what really drives you. For me, I found that clarity in understanding who I am, so that helped me define what I wanted in my life and what I didn't want in my life. So I think that again, that clarity just made me such a much happier as a person.
Yeah, and I think because I think with like media and society, right, a lot of people are talking about, right, aiming for the cars, right, aiming for the big things, right, and I think that's why a lot of people tend to be unfulfilled or lost, right, when they get to a certain level of success. But I think yours is a very change, right? The fact that you actually can have less and be way happier with what you do in your life. Yeah, so I think with that, right, I think our last question for today, right, Alvin, which is, let's say, right, because I think you also have you have spoken to multiple schools, right, with entrepreneurship, right, inspiring a whole new generation of entrepreneurs in Singapore as well, right? So for those folks might have not heard before, right, any last words for some, let's say, professionals, right, or people who are thinking of starting a business, right? They have some dreams, they have a product idea, they want to do what really drives them, right? But they're feeling fearful or stuck or lost, right? Any last final words for this group of folks, right, who feel that, hey, right, I think it's time to start something. But any words you have for audience before we close off this interview?
Yeah, there's another big lesson that I learned. When I was 16, 17, my family wanted me to go to a JC. And I did well enough in school so that I could go into a JC. However, when I went to a JC, I realized that wasn't something that I liked. And I, at that point of time, was a kid that my parents decided everything for me. What clothes I wear, what food to eat, what school I go to, what subjects I study, what enrichment classes I will go to, yada, 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 right? So everything was like taken care of me. I was very, very, taken care of as a kid. And at 16 years old, I actually had, my parents actually chose that I decided that I should go to a JC. And it was at 16 years old where I said, no, I didn't want to go to a JC because it wasn't what I wanted to study. My passion back then and my interest was computers. I wanted to learn more about programming. I loved the fact that computers opened up a whole new world to me. It wasn't just me at home going to school with my neighborhood friends. It was a whole world of people that I could reach out to through the internet. And that to me was just amazing. And I wanted to learn more about it. With that desire, it got me to explore studying a diploma, taking a diploma, and that got me to a polytechnic instead. I pushed to go to a polytechnic. I told my parents that I would do well enough so that even after spending 3 years in a poly, I could get a diploma and then go to university after that, because that was all that they wanted from me, to be a university graduate. And if I did not do that, I would not have met my co-founder on the very first day of school, of my polytechnic education. If I had not done that, if I had not met my co-founder, I would not have been the person that I am today. So I just think that it's pretty amazing once you know what you want and you actively go pursue it. Because sometimes we are given this life that other people dictate for us, right? This path that other people dictate for us. Either society dictates it, or convention dictates it. But sometimes it's not necessarily what we want. So I think that knowledge, that clarity, the understanding of who we are, what we truly want to explore, that is essential in helping us craft the life that we want. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I think love it. I think the biggest message I got from this interview, right? I think it's a reminder, right, from based on what you wrote in your book as well, which is clarity, right, and about systems, right? I think this once you get these two honed down, right, I think your life can really take yourself to the next level. Yeah. So with that, thanks so much, Alvin. Right. I think do get the book, right? You want to share a little bit more about the book before we end off the interview, bro?
Totally. So the book's available at superscaling.com/book. There is a promo right now. It's only $14.97. If you're in Singapore, it comes with free shipping. So go get it. The 5V scale engine, everything about my life is detailed in this book.
Should definitely check it out. I think there's so much value there. I think you get a lot of value from the book, right? And also based on this video. With that, thanks, Alvin. Thanks again, right? And for the rest, look forward to seeing you guys for the next edition of the Master Business interviews. Bye, folks.